the rest of you guys, if you want to turn your cameras on too, that would be great. But now we're recording, which is great, so that we can share this with Fatima and also with Marlene. And just for their sake, we are missing you guys at our Philanthropy Roundtable tonight on September 24th, but we definitely are glad to have you girls on the team as well. You guys are part of a great network, and again, I never want to waste your time with these meetings. I really want to make this efficient, and I want us to be able to share ideas about how we can improve the role, and also to celebrate y'all's successes. So for the rest of tonight, I want to take a brief look at the handbook, just to make sure we're all familiar with it, and in particular to talk about some of the deadlines that we are working to put in place. There's something that I talked about with Mary Carmen and with Diana and Eva, our wonderful outgoing philanthropy chair. I also want to talk briefly about recording our hours, because this is something that we've done in different ways, but I really want to strengthen how we record y'all's achievements. Because it's a wonderful way for you guys to look back at the work that you're doing and see concretely, like in a great metric, like, wow, maybe I didn't think that project went so well, but we had, 10 people and we served for 4 hours. That's, 40 hours of volunteer work that we invested at the food bank or at Feed My Starving Children or at the Trinity Trash Bash, or, whatever project you're doing. I want you guys to be able to see metrically, how we're doing. And I definitely want to affirm, we're not trying to quantify everything perfectly and saying like, oh, wow, well, your chapter only had, 30 hours of service last month. Like, you're really failing. No, we'll talk about how we evaluate those things. But I think the first step is starting to record them. Because I've noticed in my own life, whether I'm talking about like how much I'm reading or how much I'm exercising or how much I'm reading my Bible, or, pick up whatever you're trying to measure and improve at. You can't really evaluate where you're at until you actually know how much time you're spending on something or how much you're actually investing and putting into it. So I want us to be able to record those things. And otherwise, I want to reserve a few minutes at the end of our time to be able to hear from you guys. If you guys have requests or if you guys have concerns, I want to make sure that we're able to address those as a team. And if there's anything I can put on my plate to work on for you guys, I definitely want to make your lives easier as much as possible. And last thing I'd like to accomplish tonight would be to invite you guys to consider electing well, it's funny because you guys are already philanthropy chairs, but basically a chairperson for your roundtable. And I mentioned that because we found last year that one of the ways to really help these teams be successful is to have a point person. So don't worry, it's not like a whole extra officer position or anything. It's basically just thinking with you guys about someone that you respect in this role who could work with me to plan, our next meeting, or perhaps take a few notes, really just to be a point person for these meetings. And so I definitely want you guys to be thinking about that, and I'll come back at the end of the meeting. And if you guys have any nominations, anyone you think would be a great chair for the Philanthropy Roundtable, I would love to hear that. And we will make sure we know who our chairperson is for the rest of the year. All right, well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the beautiful handbook, and I believe I'm pulling up the most up-to-date copy. If you guys think I'm not, you're definitely welcome to let me know. But here is our new and improved Philanthropy Chair handbook. And so you guys have taken on this mantle, and although we didn't have you sign it this year, that's something we're looking at doing next year. This is effectively, think of it as your contract, and basically, where we're going to draw your expectations, or as listed here, your responsibilities. And then moving on, we want to make sure we are equipping you guys with ideas and also tips for reaching out to organizations, as well as finally just some resources and key deadlines. So in all of that, I don't want to take the time to read through all of it, because I know that a number of you guys have already seen this. And for those of you who haven't, I'll make sure to post it into the chat so you guys have access to it. Save it to your computer, mark it up. But overall, you guys are responsible, as we've been talking about, for networking, first of all, with local service organizations. Secondly, for organizing signups for those service projects that you plan, which goes hand in hand with the next item, coordinating monthly group service projects. And finally, something we've added for this year is, as you guys grow, one of the things that we've talked about is the opportunity for you to create service teams. So one of the things we've faced in the past is some organizations, have a limited number of volunteers that they accept. Some people like Fatima in LA, or excuse me, the LA is another good example. Fatima is in North Carolina, and we've talked about in North Carolina trying something new where they have students coming together from 2 cities for their chapter, but the cities are like far apart, almost like some of them are 2 and 3 hours. So long story short, we've talked about maybe having a service team for Charlotte. The puppies, oh no. I was like, Scout's back. It's actually Spencer. Do you want to wave, Spencer?
Hello, I'm getting a bone for Scout.
Anyway, brief interlude in our meeting. But yeah, so we've talked about, so for creative ideas for folks who either have like lots of volunteer interest, or organizations that allow limited volunteers, or thirdly, if you just have people who are really far apart, you guys could look at developing service teams where maybe everyone would work at a food bank, but one person would be at the Raleigh food bank, and another person would, or another team would be at the Charlotte food bank. And so obviously that is kind of a different level. That's something to aspire to work towards this year. But it's a great opportunity for you guys to really look forward to growth and to growing your team. And so to that end, I want to encourage you guys that, leaders recognize that they're not indispensable. Although you guys are amazing, and I'm so thankful for you, you're not going to be the philanthropy chair forever, right? You're probably going to have other things that God puts on your plate, whether that's next year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years from now, however long you are generously serving with us. But part of your job this year as philanthropy chair is to be looking around and finding those people, not only who love to serve and who are showing up at your service projects, but people that you can invite to serve as your assistant, to build your team and say, will you help me plan these projects? Groom them, invite them to participate in the planning process, prepare them and encourage them. Kind of like some of you are sharing in your testimonies about why you stepped up, probably because someone asked you. And so maybe you need to be the Reuben in someone's life and say, hey, I think you really are good at this, or you really have potential. Will you help me this year? And I think you should really consider becoming the philanthropy chair next year. Or will you help me, as we grow, because we're going to need to have 2 different projects. There are a lot of different ways to do that, and I'm happy to explore circumstances there, but I definitely want to cast that vision that this is not a static thing. We want to grow. We want to incorporate more students. We want to reach into new areas, and we also want to be creative and find good solutions. So for the LA team, it's a huge city. Maybe we do need to explore having an LA North project and a South LA project or something like that. And so I want to encourage you guys, while there are clear responsibilities here about your expectations each month, I'm open for creativity. I'm open for making it work for you. I don't want to be a tyrant. I don't want to be legalistic, like, well, we can't talk about that until you are doing X, Y, and Z. I want to work with you, and I want to help make it successful. Does anybody have any questions overall about those expectations of planning and executing a monthly service project? I think they're pretty clear. You guys know what you're getting into. All right, cool. Well, I briefly want to reference this beautiful list that both Diana and Eva helped me to develop. Um, and basically, if this is something brand new to you, that's okay. Like I said, you have a great support team here, but you also have lots of ideas listed here. Um, people love variety. That's something that Paola and I were talking about last year because we thought about, maybe we should really simplify and just like do the same project for a semester or a season. But everybody, all the philanthropy chairs said, no, we like variety. It's okay to do a rotation. For example, LA has been serving at an organization kind of like every 3 or 4 months. And that's great. If you want to have a rotation or variety, however you want to plan it is fine. Make it work for you. Don't drive yourself crazy feeling like you always have to have a brand new project with a brand new organization. That's unreasonable. We all live in finite, towns or cities. There are not infinite numbers of partner organizations. There are many, but there's no reason to pull your hair out every month feeling like, oh, well, we did a park cleanup last summer, so we can't do a park cleanup, in October. You can. It's okay to do things again. And chances are you'll probably have people at the next project who weren't there the last time you went. So it's totally fine to establish a relationship with an organization and to form that rotation where maybe you would go back the same place 3 or 4 months in a row. But this list is designed to be helpful. I do want to reference here, right in the middle, we've got some great seasonal ideas of toy drives and clothing drives, etc. These are great, like it says here, either seasonal options or great plan B. So let's say you have a wonderful project planned, but for whatever reason, maybe the organization cancels, maybe there's a conflict with a date that you didn't realize. Let's say you have to cancel, your upcoming October project. Well, I definitely don't want you guys to use that as an excuse to say like, well, I guess we can't serve this month, our city is gonna, languish without us. There always are creative ways, to get involved. And so that's where I've talked with several chapters who had some changes. And Charlotte chapter, for example, they're going to be doing a canned food drive this month because they ended up having another event that conflicted with their philanthropy project. And so that's okay. I like seeing initiative. I like seeing creativity. What I don't want to see is, we get to the end of the month and I'm looking for, your report about how great your philanthropy project was. And you're like, oh, well, we couldn't do it. It's just like, well, did you get creative? Did you have a plan B? Why didn't we talk about this, 3 weeks ago? So don't feel like you can't, come to me or come to the roundtable for ideas. Talk to your other officers if you're struggling to come up with a date or ideas. They are also accountable to support you. But again, this is just supposed to be a great list of ideas. One that I want to highlight as well would be serving at a nursing home or some kind of a place for the elderly. I know sometimes there are restrictions on that, sometimes age restrictions, but this is something I did in high school and I'm seeing the need for all the more. And it's something we haven't done a lot with Windrose. So I'd love to issue a loving challenge to you guys and would love to see you guys think about doing something for a nursing home this fall or winter season, because there's a lot of loneliness, people living in assisted care for various reasons who aren't with their family and can get very lonely. So you could think about going Christmas caroling or seeing if there's a nursing home that would allow you to come play board games with their residents, or there's a lot of different ways that you could serve. And a lot of times places will have openings. So definitely want to challenge you guys to explore that because that would be a great new one. I think the only other thing I want to mention on this page is that we do have initiatives that sometimes pair really well with a seminar topic. For example, every January, we talk about the issue of abortion in our nation and talk about the tragedy that it is and how we respond to it as leaders, as Christians, as Americans, and how we can better support women in crisis, babies in need. And so that's a great time in that January, February range to look at partnering with a pregnancy resource center. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that with a diaper drive, or you guys in Detroit just served at a fundraising dinner for Right to Life campaign. I love that. That was something new for you guys. And also, many cities in January have a March for Life. And so I want to affirm this as an example that sometimes a service project might look different than you think. And in our book, the March for Life, that qualifies as, in effect, a service project. It's raising awareness. It's coming together for really what Spencer and I feel is the most important moral crisis of our time, like the greatest tragedy facing our nation. And so that's a great service project for January. And we would love to see all of our chapters do that. So we'll talk more about that as the year goes on. But bottom line, get creative. If you run out of ideas, come back to this list, ask others for ideas about what they've done. I guarantee it will be helpful. We have a wonderful page next that I just want to briefly mention about how to reach out to organizations. And I believe Eva initially drafted this, and Diana offered some good edits as well. It's important that you remember when you're reaching out to organizations to plan a service project, especially if you're not just like signing up on a form, but you're actually like emailing someone to say, hey, I'd like to bring a team to volunteer. It's important to be professional. And that's part of why I know I can trust you guys. And I love working with you guys because I do trust your communication skills. And I trust you as ambassadors for Windrose because you guys are often going to be the first, people from Windrose that these organizations have ever heard from. And so, our reputation as an organization is on the line. And the success of your project is also on the line, because if you don't communicate clearly and plan effectively, there is no project. And so I just want to encourage you, definitely be as professional as possible, be more formal than you think. You may get a really informal reply back. Great. Feel free to be, less formal from there. But the first time you email an organization or call someone, always identify yourself as a representative of Windrose, and make it absolutely clear who you are, why you're calling, and everyone who responds should be really helpful and be excited about it. But if for some reason they don't have an opportunity for you, or can't help you, or don't have a project, all you need to do is say thank you for your time. We wish you and your organization all the best, because remember, they're probably a small nonprofit like us. It's not their fault. Well, it is their fault if they can't handle volunteers, but it may not be the volunteer coordinator's fault that they can't work with you at this time. And so always be polite and professional. And if you guys need help, I know we've had some great drafts of like emails, and I think there might be one down here. Maybe not. If you guys need help drafting an outreach email to an organization, I know that's something that Diana and Paola and Mary Carmen have had to do. And Eva, I believe, also has a template, and I'd be happy to share that. So feel free to ask. Yeah. Okay. So I think there's only briefly 3 more things I wanted to cover on here. So yeah. Okay. Awesome. Sorry, something came up. There we go. We're back. All right. So yes. So basically, I just want to reference this part at the bottom here that talks about creating philanthropy flyers. Is this feeds into a larger piece about promoting these events. And this is something I really want to work with you guys this fall to collaborate and improve on. I know that for a lot of you guys, or really every chapter, there's a disparity between the number of folks who will show up to a seminar and the number of folks who will show up to a service project. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can't always accommodate, however many come to your seminars at a service project. We're often looking for a more limited number, and that's fine. I'm not saying those numbers have to be equal, but basically, I'd love for us to really make an effort this fall to communicate and promote our projects overboard. I think it's something that we have not focused on as much. And I love seeing the creative ways that some of our veterans have started to implement new strategies, with Mary Carmen creating a really cute flyer every month saying, like, this is what we're doing, this is when we're doing it, be there, be square. And it's something that you can put on an email, it's something you can put on an announcement at a seminar, it's something you can print out and share, or text to your texting group for your chapter. I really want to make sure that when someone doesn't show up to a project, the reason is not that they didn't know or that they couldn't show their parents the details. Because I really think our members have a heart to serve. I think a lot of them need hours for school. And I want to make sure that we're able to get them as much information as possible. And I think particularly with younger members, it usually is the information gap, that they don't know where to go, or they haven't shown their parents something official about what it is and where to go. And so I want to make sure that we're really working intentionally. And so to that end, part of your job is to create just a simple kind of flyer. It could be black and white if you really want it to, or it could get a little more creative. We've got a list of some places you can create those flyers for free. But I just want to encourage you guys, let's really maximize and make sure that it's not an information gap that's keeping people from their projects. And we can tackle other complications together as well, but that's a really big one I want to make sure. And if you guys really want to have printed flyers at your seminars, I'm open to coming up with a way to do that and a way to fund that with you guys. If you guys want to make sure that at every seminar you guys have a stack of little flyers that say what your project is and where it's going to be for everyone to take home and show their parents, I'm open to that. If that's what we think it'll take, it's definitely worth a try. We've done it at times in Dallas, and I do think it can help. So bottom line, make sure we get the word out together. All right. Last thing I want to say on info, and then we can go back to our philanthropy chair and any other thoughts and questions from you guys. So like we talked about, in order to make your position successful, I really want to make sure that everyone, you and me, have some deadlines in place. And so I know that last year, I think there were 1 or 2 deadlines in place for the philanthropy chairs, but I honestly totally dropped the ball on enforcing those. And so I take responsibility for that. And I apologize. You guys are amazing. For those of you serving last year, that you pulled it all together even without me. And so that's a testimony to you guys. And I appreciate that so much. But I really want to work together to make sure that we're planning ahead and that we have clear information. So with that said, my plan in working with some of you guys and talking with Yassel in the summer is to have you guys submit a simple proposal by the 15th of each month. So for example, on October 15th, I will be looking for a proposal from you guys for your November project. So the goal is that would challenge you guys to be planning ahead, and maybe you've already got your November project in place. Great, you're ahead of the curve. But it'll challenge you guys to plan ahead, to give yourself time for a plan B if needed, and also give you time once you submit that proposal for you to get all your ducks in line with making sure your chapter is on board with the plan for that month, that it deconflicts with the seminar and anything else going on. I also, want to make sure that, we're able to have all those promotional materials in mind, that we can start sending an email telling people, hey, save the date. We're going to have a service project, on November 12th, or whatever date that it may be. So bottom line, by the 15th of each month, I'm going to be looking for a proposal from you guys for the following month's philanthropy project. And I'll just show you guys briefly what that looks like. So we have this awesome little form here. It should not take super long time to fill out. And honestly, it's really designed as a checklist of all the things you should have confirmed before you start promoting a project, because it makes it pretty difficult when you promote a project, but people don't know what time they're supposed to be there, or they don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it, or the mission of the organization they're helping. They're like, well, why should I care? Why should I spend my Saturday going to this organization? Like, I'd rather sleep in. You guys have to make that case. And so here in the checklist, we want to make sure that we're allowing you guys to really walk through all of the things that need to be in place before you start promoting a project. So obviously you need to know who it is, the chapter, and then the organization or project that you want to partner with. So this would be the food bank or the city if you're doing a park cleanup, or whatever organization you want to partner with. And a brief statement of purpose. Again, I'm not looking for magnum opus. I'm looking for like a phrase or a sentence. To end hunger in North Texas, for example, the North Texas Food Bank. And then also want to see who you're contacting. So if you're working with a volunteer coordinator, or maybe it's just a general email, let's put that down. It'll make it easier when you go back next time and you want to contact them. It'll also make it easier for perhaps your successor, so that a year from now, if a different philanthropy chair wants to go and contact that organization, they'll know the name and the email, and they'll be able to follow up as well. So this is really just doing your future self and your future philanthropy chairs a favor. And then finally, just the basic details of when is the project happening? When does it start? When does it end? The address? What are you guys going to be doing? This is a good question to ask, especially for you new philanthropy chairs. If you don't ask, you might end up doing something weird that you don't expect. Like we've showed up for some projects and we're like, really? That's all you want us to do? Like one time it was like dusting furniture at a I think it was like a thrift store benefiting a nonprofit in Dallas, and we're like, really? That's what you want us to do? Dust? And it's great, and it ended up being helpful. But just know what you're getting into, and it's okay to ask for details. Also, very important to know, number of volunteers, how people will register, because some organizations do require that you register through their website. That does make it a little harder, but it can be done. And then finally, just some other info in case there's a need for a waiver or that external registration page. So I want to pause here. Anybody have any questions about the deadline of the 15th or that proposal form?
Well, for me, my one question isn't about those. It's about how would you know, like, how many students want to volunteer, and how many would be a safe number to tell them?
Great question. So I'm glad you asked, Jess, because I realized we haven't talked about this tonight. I definitely welcome for our veterans, especially Mary Carmen and Diana, you're welcome to jump in here. But it's often a little bit of working with both the organization's expectations and knowing your chapter. So in the beginning, I remember we worked with like the Chicago team, and they're like, well, we're going to reserve, 40 spots because we have a really big group and everyone wants to come. Honestly, 40 is a huge group. Normally, when we plan a project, no matter the size of the chapter, we're going to plan for something that will be from approximately like 10 to 20 people. If it's a special event, we might plan a much bigger project, but we typically plan projects that are for about 10 to 20 people. And most organizations honestly don't have enough space for a much bigger group than that. And so it kind of creates some competition and allows the people in your chapter to know, like, oh, space is limited. Like, if I want to go, I better, commit to going and sign up. So that can be a helpful thing for planning for everyone. Mary Carmen and Diana, would you guys add to that with some words of wisdom about how to plan for the numbers?
I would definitely say, like, when you contact X person from the organization, always include the size of your group, because if you're like 40, but they're like, oh, we only take like 50 all together, so we can't just have your one group be a part of it because we want to have like everybody in our community to be a part of it. So to me, it's always been helpful, like, oh, I'm going to take this amount of people, and sometimes they're like, okay, that's fine, like, because we have enough space for others to be included as well. So yeah, just always make sure to include it like straight on, because at first I didn't, and then we would show up and they were like, we weren't expecting you. So yeah.
Great words. Thanks, Mary Carmen. Awesome. Anything to add, Diana?
I was just gonna say like what you said. It's knowing the group. Like you obviously don't want to say like, oh, I'm gonna take 40 people, and then you end up bringing like 20. So yeah, knowing your group, and then also knowing their expectations, like you said, exactly like that. Because sometimes they do need a lot of volunteers, but most of the time it's usually just like 15, 20, 25. So I think it's, yeah, knowing your group and knowing their expectations.
Definitely. Yeah, because you guys bring up a good point. If, maybe you could get a group of, 40, but it's definitely not a good, it's not a good policy to commit to bringing 40 volunteers and then showing up with half of that. That makes us less trustworthy as an organization. And typically, we can avoid that as long as we're working together, towards a reasonable goal of bringing, so many volunteers. But yes, definitely recommend start in that 10 to 20 range. If your projects are really full, just tell people, don't worry, there'll be more. And you could always look for, ways to increase your numbers. But yes, definitely start reasonable, and everyone will thank you for it.
Thank you, guys.
Totally. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, well, knowing that it is getting late, I want to just mention the last piece of business that I wanted to cover would be about these philanthropy reports. And so this is a great thing that you guys will get a chance to hopefully practice this month. So on the 29th of each month, or the 28th if it's February and not leap year, although I think next year might be a leap year. Anyway, side note. So basically at the end of each month, and we just pick the 29th, so you can put it on your calendar, I have it on my calendar, everyone knows, so that I can follow up with you. And if on the 29th, I haven't seen it, I'm going to be sending you guys a reminder, hey, I want to hear about your project. And we are striving to make this report super painless, something that you could do at any time. So as you notice here, information already pops up. Because we've done this report before, but we've changed the format. So some of you guys may have never even seen this before, even those of you who've served before. But basically, I just took the information that the first 10 people have submitted when we were testing out this philanthropy project proposal last year. I took all this information and I moved it automatically into a spreadsheet. So here is where it appears. Now what we did at the end is we put these beautiful yellow columns. And they indicate basically a space for how many volunteers actually came to the project, because maybe you plan for 20, but 22 show up or 18 show up. So actually recording how many volunteers and then how many hours were served. So if you go to a project for 3 hours or 4 hours or however many time hours that you serve. And then finally, a space for you to just give some really brief feedback. It doesn't need to be a paragraph. It could be a sentence or two. Would you go back is the prompt there. And this is helpful for you when you're looking back at this project and thinking about worthwhile organizations to go back to. It's also helpful for future philanthropy chairs. And so it's just a great space for you to conclude the month and look back. Again, this could take you like literally 5 minutes at the end of every month. I don't want this to be frustrating. And the nice thing is all this other or information about the organization and the project is something that you will already have submitted the previous month when you do your proposal. And it's something you can edit at any time. But it basically just allows us to close the loop and have a way to track your progress and to have a way to really look back at the good work that you guys are doing. And we'll be able to see it by chapter. We can separate the spreadsheet and sort it and see like, oh, these are all the, Detroit hours, or this is how the West Coast is doing. Or, these are the hours overall that our teams across the country are investing in their cities and communities and all of these wonderful organizations. So yeah, basically, again, on the 29th, all I'm looking for at the end of the month is for you guys to go back in and say, how many volunteers actually served at your project? How many hours did you actually serve? And it doesn't need to be to the minute, but, don't round up. If you served 3 hours, don't say, oh, well, it was, 3 hours and 5 minutes. It was practically 4 hours, be reasonable. If it's 3.5, I'm open to rounding up half hours, but no more than that. And then finally, just make sure you give yourself and your future philanthropy chairs some great feedback. Because you never know, like you could go to a wonderful organization that has other branches in, other cities with Windrose chapters. And it could be a great way to share the wealth and recommend places. This is a great place to go. Hey, if you're looking for ideas and you're feeling stuck as we continue to develop this spreadsheet, these are not only general ideas of food banks, these are like actual places that you could go. And it's a great place to go for ideas. So is everybody on board with what we're doing on the 29th? Coming back, listing volunteers, hours served, and would you go back? Great. All right, cool. Well, that is everything I wanted to cover for tonight. So thank you guys again for setting aside that time and for allowing us to invest an hour so that we can become not only better acquainted, but really, like we talked about, that stronger bridge to our communities and to the character formation process. And Diana is exactly right. If we want to see our team and our chapter become better leaders, then it starts really with service. And there are so many wonderful ways that our cities need us to serve. And before I open it up to questions, I'll just close with this. I remember when I was talking with Eva, and she was one of our first philanthropy chairs, or the first in the Los Angeles chapter. And this was 2 years ago. She comes up to me after she's been elected, ironically, and she's like, Bailey, I just realized I don't really know what philanthropy means. And she'll still tell you this story. So she told me I can share it. And so we talked about, philanthropy comes from the word love, phileo in Greek. It's one of the 4 kinds of love in Greek. It's the brotherly love, the kind of love that gives without expecting anything in return. And philanthropy really is a love of those around us. And as we engage in philanthropy and service, we're actually choosing to love others in a tangible way, in a way that they can feel and see, and in a way that is memorable, like we talked about, to everyone else serving with you at that project. And I'm excited to share those stories of what that looks like in your chapter. Again, all of the, Google Forms and spreadsheets and paperwork and planning, all of that is for the goal of really transforming lives, both those in your chapter and of the people that you're helping. And I think you'll find at the end of the day that you guys will be the most blessed. And again, I know you guys are incredibly busy. None of you guys are sitting on the couch twiddling your thumbs. Many of you guys have had a long day of work and school and other responsibilities. But this is the time of our lives. I'm going to include myself in this group where we may not have or feel like we have a lot of extra time, but we do have time for things that are important to us. And you guys have all chosen that this year, Windrose and particularly our service projects are important to you guys. And I think that you guys are modeling, again, one of the most important virtues that we espouse in Windrose. And that would be the virtue of selflessness and of saying that others are more important than yourselves. And philanthropy, as a young person, may look a lot different than it'll look, 50 years from now when, we're all sitting at the end of a long career and all sorts of illustrious things. And it's funny, I think philanthropy is often thought of as donating money to something. We think of a philanthropist as someone who is super wealthy and just, gives stuff. And that may be true in a lot of cases, but I don't believe that's the end of the definition. I believe that is one part of the definition. And we, together as a team, and with your chapters, have the opportunity to be philanthropists in your community, to be the kind of people who love others tangibly by serving them with our time and our talents. And those things are valuable. In fact, many people say that time is our most valuable resource. And so actually, it's one of the best things that we can give. I'm not saying give it all away, but we can choose to invest, one Saturday a month or one day out of the month that we can serve others well and give of our time and of ourselves. And, right now as young people, that's what we have. Yes, you're going to have to fight for it. Yes, you're going to have to carve it out. And yes, you guys as philanthropy chairs are going to have to convince your chapter members that this is worth doing and that it's going to be super fun. But it is worth doing. And it really is such an important, tangible display of love in our communities. And so that's why we do what we do. That's what the philanthropy chair position is all about. The person who's spearheading those efforts and building those bridges. And so I just want to thank you guys once again for stepping up to the plate and for making sure that your chapters do not miss out or become lazy and selfish or hermits, just reading old books all the time or reading the Constitution. No, we've got to put it into practice. So with that, I want to turn it over to you guys. I know we could talk all night about lots of things, so don't feel like you have to cover everything. We do have to chat. But does anybody have any burning questions or comments as we close?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go for it.
My question is, you said that students would want community service hours for school.
Mhm.
So would you be able to sign that off?
Yes. I would say it depends on the project. Sometimes we have people have the organization that you're helping sign off on it. Sometimes they'll just offer. But yes, as philanthropy chairs, you guys would have authorization to sign off and just put your title and Windrose on there. And if you're worried about a phone number or something, you guys could always share my number if you'd prefer. I've never had anyone ever call and ask about a signature, so I don't anticipate anyone ever would. But yes, as far as being a representative of Windrose, you guys would have the authority to sign off on those hours.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions as we close?
I have a quick question about connecting with like the fellowships, because I know last year we didn't do we did, for the most part we did service projects, but we had like 3 fellowships throughout the year. And I just had a question, if we had to, when we have a fellowship, do we still have to have the service project, or can it be one or the other? Or yeah.
Good question. So this is something that's we've tried to do a little bit of trial and error on. Bottom line, we believe that if you're only meeting once a month with your chapter, that's pretty limited, and it's hard to build relationships that way. And so even if you're having a month where maybe your event looks different, like a fellowship, I do think it's still important to have a service project during that month. In a way, it's like, your service doesn't take a break. I am open again to creative ideas. So if for some reason, maybe it's a really busy month because it's a convention month, or maybe it's, Christmas is coming, or, whatever the reason is where you feel like, I just don't know how we're going to fit this in. I am open to saying, you know what, we'll do something different. Maybe you would do a shorter service project that wouldn't be on a Saturday. Maybe it would be something like a couple hours on an afternoon one week. Or maybe it would be a perfect time for a kind of toy drive or food drive or blanket drive. But I think that if we take a lot of breaks, I notice that it's it's easy to feel like the service side of our emphasis and our mission is taking a back seat to everything else. So I think it's much better to have the consistency of one project each month. And I welcome, pushback, Diana, if you feel like this isn't going to work, but we also just see it as part of that larger picture, that getting your chapter together at least twice a month is an important part of actually keeping the community together. Because otherwise it's like, oh, it's that thing that I do like once in a blue moon. And you're not, actually getting together and having that time to serve. What do you think?
Yeah, I had the idea of doing something smaller this for October because we are having a fellowship and it is convention month and then we still have the seminars. So it was like a busy month, but I was thinking of doing like something small, like a drive or something like that, where we don't all specifically have to meet on a date, but we can, like a group of us or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thanks, Diana.
If I may add, I was gonna say, we do fellowships, but we also don't do them to like a grand scheme. Like what we do is we after every single service event and after every seminar, obviously those who are available and can, we go out to eat dinner, and it's honestly like either dinner, breakfast, whatever fits in the schedule, right? It's such a bonding time. Like it's like a debrief from what you just did, whether it's a seminar or service project. And then for me, when we do it after the service project, it's really helpful because they're like, oh, I liked it. Oh, I didn't. Or maybe we could do this better instead. Or they share with me what they're something like a passion or a purpose that they want to serve to. And so it's really helpful. And it's still a fellowship in a sense. So fellowships don't necessarily have to be movie night or picnic. It could be a smaller thing where it's more personal, and yeah, it's great.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mary Carmen. I was thinking about it and then obviously hadn't mentioned it, but I really love that. And I know some of you guys do that, especially after seminars. We just did this with Bakersfield team last week and it was great. But I think it's a great thing to add, like you were saying, Mary Carmen. Plan it. Have, an after party for each of your philanthropy projects. I think you'll find people may look forward to them more. You'll get more feedback, like you were saying, Mary Carmen. But now when the DFW team sends out info for the philanthropy project, they have both info of this project, so maybe it's a 9 to 11 project, and then they have a part that says, okay, and from 11 to 1, there'll be an after party. And ideally picking a location, even if it's the Chick-fil-A, near the project, or the McDonald's or the Wendy's near the project, somewhere where people can meet afterwards to grab a bite to eat. You do not need to be responsible for buying them lunch or anything like that. It's really just opening up a place for people to gather and debrief, like Mary Carmen was saying. And I think that's really made a difference for our teams here. And if it's not something you've tried, specifically for the philanthropy projects, I think it would be a really cool addition for you guys this fall. So thanks for Mary Carmen for the suggestion. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Carmen. That's a really good idea.
Awesome. All right. Well, I know it is getting super late. So last order of business, I wanted to know, are there any nominations for the point person for the Philanthropy Roundtable? We could always put this on hold if we wanted to figure it out another time. But I wanted to open up the floor. I know there would be lots of wonderful candidates. And again, this is not an extra officer position. This really is a person who'd be willing to take a few notes for anyone who's missed the meetings, and also to help plan our next roundtable meeting. All right. Well, Jenny and others, I've gotten some different nominations. If you guys want to put them in the chat, or if you want to share, you're welcome to. We have a nomination from, we have a nomination for Diana. Would anyone second her nomination? just to keep it formal?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thanks, Jess. All right. Well, hearing no other nominations at this point, Diana, would you like to accept the nomination as our Philanthropy Roundtable chair?
Thank you. Yeah, I humbly accept, of course.
Excellent. Well, hearing no objections, thank you so much for stepping up to serve in this way. I really love to be able, well, I always love working with you, but I really think this will be a great way for us to make sure that these meetings and this team of support doesn't disappear throughout the year. So awesome. All right. Thank you, Diana. Well, let me pray for you guys, and then I'll let you guys go. And happy to, again, keep the conversation going and continue planning with you guys. There's lots more we could have talked about. And I look forward to keeping the conversation going. So, but for now, I want to be respectful of your time. So will you join me in prayer as we close? All right. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for these fantastic young men and women who have stepped up to serve as philanthropy chairs. Lord, it's such an important job. And Father, I pray that you would strengthen them. I pray that you would help them to take this role seriously, but that they wouldn't be intimidated, that they would see this as an opportunity to build bridges into their communities, to be ambassadors for Windrose, to introduce their chapter members and even their officers into brand new character building opportunities. I thank you so much for wonderful organizations that you have for us to work with this year. I pray that you would help us to be creative, that we would prioritize, Lord, serving in our communities, and Lord, that you would bring joy in this process, in the planning process, in the debriefing process, and especially within the projects themselves. Father, we pray that these projects would glorify you and would be instruments and tools of mercy to help those in need around us. And I pray that you would equip us to rise to the challenge faithfully as we carry out these duties and expectations. And thank you so much, Lord, once again, for all of these fantastic philanthropy chairs, both new and returning. It is such a privilege to work with them. And I pray that you would bless the rest of their week and that you would strengthen them to meet the challenges ahead and protect them and allow them to get some rest this evening. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, thank you guys so much. You guys are the best. And you guys are overachievers because this is actually the first roundtable meeting we've been able to have. I had to postpone the other two that were planned with other teams. So philanthropy chairs, overachievers. You guys have a gold star in my book. So thank you guys. I'm so proud of you. I want to be here for you guys. Don't be strangers. Again, you're welcome to post encouragement, thoughts, questions in our channel on Slack. But again, thank you for making time for the meeting. And with that, you're dismissed. Have a great rest of your night.